Is your team struggling with dealing with objections? Are they getting the, I need to think about it, I need to talk to my spouse, but that's too expensive? I want you to pay close attention to what I'm about to share with you, because what I'm about to share with you has been applied over 3,000 one-on-one high-ticket fitness consults, converting 40% of your prospects into clients, converting 80 to 90%. What would that do for your business? And so this has been practiced. This is my go-to for how to overcome objections and what we do to make this happen. What we're gonna do today, guys, what I wanna cover is how do we actually deal with objections the right way? How do we deal with it without being the sleazy salesperson where you're expecting your team to watch a bunch of, high-strung car salesman type videos, and for them to take that and actually do that in your wellness business, which you don't want in the first place. So this is not about how do we overcome objections the way where we're gonna be sleazy, have quick objection overcomes, say things like, it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. Those things do have a place sometimes if they can be used wisely, but I want to give you a formula today that's going to make it so much easier for you and your team to loop objections instead of attacking them head on and having to really be in a combative state with your prospects. So let's understand the numbers. And these numbers, if you understand this can drastically change your business, make you more money, and of course, get more people signed up saying yes. And so the first thing that we need to know is that 10% of people are going to just be a no. They're a hell no. These are the weirdos. These are the people that for some reason, they just like to go to consults. They're the people that book multiple appointments, they come in the door, maybe they come in once a year and they never actually buy anything. There are always just gonna be 10% of people where it's just a hard no. There's not gonna be any convincing, no persuasion, nothing you can do is gonna be able to get them to sign up. And now sometimes that's because of financial reasons where they truly just do not have the cash, they don't have access to credit, they can't get approved for a payment plan, whatever that may be, you're going to have 10% of people that say no. You're never going to be 100% only. Now, the next thing that we have to look at is then we have 20% of people that are just going to say yes. These are your hot ones. These are your referrals. These are the people that already know you. They know their wife comes here, or their spouse or their friend or whatever it may be is already, involved with you in getting results, and these people show up and they're ready to buy, or they are seeking out, right? These are the people that actually Googled you and that's how they found you. They came through the website. They already have been looking at, doing different, medical weight loss, body contouring, sculpting, whatever it may be. They've been already looking into it. And so they're ready to buy. And so all we have to do with these people is just not screw up the sell, right? Not be too long-winded, not try and oversell them, not, take, them from being a yes to end up being a no. And so it's really important that we understand that we have this metric here. 10% of people are just going to say no. They will not be able to be overcome. Objections will not be able to be overcome. Then 20% of people are just going to say yes. We have to get out of their way, let them pay, and that's it. And then now this is where the magic happens. We're left with 70%. And this is where majority of the action happens. And so we have 30% up here, right? That's already dealt with. That gives us 70% right here. And these 70% of people that are people that can be a yes. They are people that will sign up if you can persuade them, if you can get them over that hump, if you can get past the first 1, 2, 3 objections. If you can do that, this 70% of people is where you have a ridiculous amount of return on investment on your ad campaigns, a ridiculous amount of upfront cash that's coming in, and you have consistent people being signed up by your team. And so what usually happens is most people do not try and even overcome objections. Most staff members that we have secret shopped, that we have interviewed, when we say no, when we give I need to talk to my spouse, or I need to think about it, or can you give me the information, I'll take it home. When we ask stuff like that, we usually never get a rebuttal. We never even get someone that either attacks the objection, asks another question, tries again. Usually we're missing just that. And so if we're missing that, you can see how much of the pie you are missing out on, how much revenue your business is missing because your staff is not trying to convince these 70% of people that are not just going to say yes when they first get signed up. Or sometimes what they'll do is we have found is that they're not even clearly asking for the close with a lot of these people, but that's for another video. So now that we understand the numbers, we understand why this is so important. Because let me ask you this. If you have your 20% of people that just say yes when they come in the door, if you guys are decent at sometimes overcoming objections, and maybe there's another 20% here that we're signing up. So we have about a 40% close rate, which is about average of what we see for most people. If you could go from signing up 40%, converting 40% of your prospects and clients to converting 80 to 90%, what would that do for your business? Go look at your stats from last month. How much new business did you have? How many consults came through the door? If you converted at a 70, 80, or even 90%, what would that have done for extra revenue for you? And so that's why this is so important. That's why I want you to pay close attention to what I'm about to share with you, because what I'm about to share with you has been applied over 3,000 one-on-one high-ticket fitness consults for weight loss transformation, and also applied over 1,000 different consults in the B2B space. And so this has been practiced. This is my go-to for how to overcome objections. And what we do to make this happen is we loop objections, we don't attack them. So one of the biggest things that I learned in the beginning was something called attacking objections. These were the quick one-liners. You know, this is the Grant Cardone sales training. This is just how do we be witty and how do we have a quick comeback for any time someone says no. Now, the cool part about it is that will work, because half of the time to be able to just get someone over the edge, we just have to be able to ask for the close multiple times. And so what that type of sales process does, that type of attacking objections, what it does is it just simply gets you asking for the close more than once. And if you do that, you're gonna close more people, right? Most people's natural default state is to say no. It's how they protect themselves. Even if it's something that they want, they're so used to being sold to that their default answer is going to be, I need to think about it, I need to talk to my spouse, or you know what, I'm just not gonna do it financially right now. And so if we can ask for the close more than once, we can usually get past that. But what I wanna show you today is how do you do it in a consistent way that your staff will also do, and it's less salesy and it's a much better experience for your prospect. So how do we do that? We loop objections, we don't attack them. And so the principle behind this, before I even dive into what the 3 loops are, I wanna kind of give you the principle and the psychology of why does this work. So as I mentioned before, most people's natural state is defense. It's to say no, right? You have the 10%, the 20% of people that are gonna say yes, but most other people, their natural response is no, and they're doing that to protect themselves. And so what this means is that the first objection they give you, 99% of the time, is not the real objection. It's not the real reason they're not signing up. They're just giving you the first thing that came to their mind, and the first thing that will come to someone's mind is either gonna be, let's put the decision on someone else. So, hey, I need to talk to my spouse about this. Or they're gonna delay the decision, right? Like most people do, which means I need to think about an objection. Or they're gonna go ahead and use the price objection, say it's too expensive. And so the first objection that you get from someone is usually not the truth. And this is where the principle of looping comes from. Because the issue that would happen, for example, let's just say that Susie comes in and says, hey, I need to talk to my spouse about this. If you buckle down and attack that objection head on, all you're doing is backing her in a corner where she now needs to make a lie the truth. Unless you're gonna call her out on that, and then that's where we get into a combative, awkward type sales process that your staff is just not going to consistently do, okay? And so the point of looping is that we do not attack the first objection, because what happens is Susie says, I need to talk to my spouse, and then we go to a standard sales, process where we're like, we start talking about that. We're like, oh, what do you need to talk to your spouse about? Like, what questions do you have for them? I can help you out with that right now. Right? Or, oh, can you call your spouse right now? Let's just get him on the phone, and I can definitely help you out, because he's definitely you don't want him to hear this from my words if this is something that you truly want to do. Or what questions would your spouse have, right? So if you go down that route, you're attacking the objection, and it means that you're making the objection true, because they're not going to come back then after you say, oh, well, why don't we call your spouse right now? And they're not going to come back and be like, hey, I was just lying about that. That's actually not the real objection. I was more concerned about this. No, they're going to just say now double down on their lie. And they're going to say something like, oh, well, he's at work right now, so I'll talk with him at his home, right? They're going to just keep leaning into that. And now you have nowhere to go except for being pushy, aggressive to try and get the close. And so instead, we can loop these objections. And so what happens when we loop an objection is we pretty much ignore it, right? And we actually get to the root of what the problem is actually going to be. And the way that we can do this is we have 3 different types of loops that we can go to. We're gonna go to them in order always. So the first loop is called program certainty. And so this is a really, really big one because 9 times out of 10, if we have someone giving us objections in the close, it usually has nothing to do with time, need to talk to the spouse, or financial. Usually it's because they are not 100% convicted on that this program is going to get them the result that they're looking for. Or they're not convinced on how it can do so. Or they have some confusion, some misunderstanding around your pitch and what you presented. They're overwhelmed, right? So all things that actually deal with the program and doesn't actually deal with spouse, financial, or time objections. And so this is usually where there's a lack of clarity. And so this is what we first want to see. Are they actually sold and do they believe in the program or service? Then the second loop we go into is trust. Now, because if someone 100% believes that this service, this thing can get them X result, and they're still not signing up, then now the next level that we have to look at is what is the trust? What is the trust for you? Do they trust the things that you are saying? Do they believe you, right? They might believe in your program, but maybe they saw a Google review before they came in. And if, I don't know, if anyone's like me, if I see 5 stars Google reviews, 100 there, if I just see that one negative one, that one where they're like, they scammed me out of my money, or they weren't honest, or they did this, or blah, blah, blah. If I see that, that's going to stand out more than the other 99 5-star reviews. And so maybe they saw something like that, right? Maybe they heard something, right? Maybe there's something that's decreasing the level of trust. So even though they believe that the service you have can get them the result, you might not be the person or the business that they want to do it with. And so we need to dive into that. And then the last loop is where we can now move into attacking a little bit. And the last loop is going to be what we call action threshold, right? Because if they believe in the program, they trust you, and they're still not taking action, then now we need to get to the root cause of what is actually stopping it. Is it them? Do they not believe that they're going to be successful? Have they done multiple programs and spent thousands of dollars on this in the past, on their health and their wellness and their looks, and they've never done it? They've never stuck to it, so they didn't get the results. So there's a lack of trust for themselves, right? Or maybe is it truly a financial issue? Is it the wrong thing? Do we need to take out and drop them down to a lower level service to be able to get them started today? That's what we can find out in action threshold. And so these loops, while this may sound complicated, I promise you this is so much easier than having to memorize objection overcomes. Because now you just walk through a checklist in your head that when you get that first no, then now you know you're going to loop to program certainty. And then when you get the second no there, you're going to loop the trust. And then when you get the third no there, then now you loop to action threshold. And so now you've asked for the close 3 times, all right? 3 times, technically 4 because of the first time that you asked for it. But now you've asked for the close 4 times in a way where you didn't have to memorize some type of fancy objection overcome. And now it's so much easier for you to get there. And I promise you, this will help you close more deals. This will push that 70% of people that are in the maybe stage. It will push majority of them over into the yes phase, okay? And so this is worth learning. So now let's talk about how do we actually tactically do this. So there's really a 3-step process to looping, and it's the same for no matter which loop you are on. So let's kind of role play this through, right? If Susie's telling me, hey, you know what? I love this. I just need to talk to my husband and I'll get back with you later on. Can I come back in next week? All right. So the first thing that I'm doing is step 1 is I'm going to clarify, right? So the first thing I'm doing is not attacking that objection. I'm not saying that the objection is true. I'm not asking questions about it. All I'm doing is clarifying. And so if Susie tells me that she needs to talk to her spouse, like, yeah, definitely makes sense. We definitely get a lot of people started here that, come in for help and, they like to make sure that they're on the same page with their spouse. So that's kind of what you're saying, right? So I'm just clarifying what she said. I'm not agreeing with it. I'm not giving it, validity or anything like that. I'm just clarifying and making sure she knows I understand what the words that just came out of her mouth, okay? And then now we move into number 2, which is ask, okay? And so this is really important because what happens is once I've clarified that, when she gives me that objection, what is she thinking? She's thinking she's sitting across from a salesperson. This person's going to try and overcome that. But now I can really take her off her guard, drop her guard, and still get to where I want to go. So now that I've clarified, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for permission to go into what my loop is. So I'm like, okay, perfect. So yeah, definitely get that. You know, a lot of people, you know, definitely want to make sure they're on the same page with their spouse. When they're doing something like this, it's going to be pretty life-changing. But you know what? Before we even dive into that, talk about, you know, how we can still get you started and all that stuff, they're like, before we even go down that path, do you mind if I just ask you a question? And so you see the difference there, right? I'm not attacking that objection. I'm not trying to overcome it or anything like that. I'm even dropping her guard and saying, before I even talk to you about still getting started today, before we even talk about signing up, right? I'm taking it off the table so that way now she's not in a state where she's trying to be protective and sticking to that objection. So then from there, I just go into the first loop, program certainty. So do you mind if I ask you a question? They're obviously gonna say yes. Then I'm going to go into the program certainty loop, which is going to be something like this. Well, really the biggest thing I just wanna know, Susie, like the program we walk through, you know, the steps, all of that we just talked about, like, do you see that helping you, you know, drop those 20 pounds and kind of really just, you know, shape up in the way that you want it to? Right, so I'm being specific based off of what I got from discovery, but I'm looping that into program certainty. And that's the first step, right? Now, once she says that, she's either gonna say yes, right, absolutely, or she's gonna say no, right? Or she's gonna ask some buying questions. And so this allows you to know where to go from there. Most people are probably gonna say yes if they're already here. They're gonna say, yeah, it makes sense, I get it. And then that's where you challenge them and have them sell themselves by the next step I would go into is perfect. I'm glad you see that. Like, what to you makes the biggest difference here? Like, what part of this do you think is really what's gonna help you out? And then you get them to harp on that. And then now Susie's talking about, well, you know, I definitely think being able to come in here once a week and get laser done and then to be able to have these services and to have help with nutrition, I definitely think that's gonna help me have success long term. And then now all we do is now we just go for the close again, right? We agree, perfect, awesome. I agree, Susie. I definitely think that's gonna be the biggest part for you because you've never had that before. So honestly, like if I can just make a suggestion, let's go ahead then and get you started now, right? Let's go ahead and get this process going so we can get those results faster than you having to be delayed by another week and we fill up pretty fast. So let's just go ahead and get this done now. Does that sound good? Right, and so because she just sold herself on it. So it does not feel salesy. You're not trying to attack that objection. So again, we clarify what was the objection. We don't agree with it. We don't attack it. We don't ask questions about it. All we do is clarify it, okay? So I clarify it, then I ask for permission, and then I hit it with the loop, right? Program certainty. First, try and figure out, is she certain on the program? If she is certain on the program, I get her to explain to me specifically why, what's the biggest thing that stands out for her. If she's not certain on the program, then we know we need to exit the close, get out of this. There's no even point of being here and go back to discovery, go back to pitch and really start to go back and make sure that we're even talking about the right service and then making sure she understands how the service is gonna get her results. Okay, so that's how we deal with program certainty. So now here's the deal. Sometimes people are still gonna come back. Now you will be surprised in that first loop, because that's the second time you're now asking for the close, how many yeses you'll get just from that, okay? That's the sweet spot. It's like, even if all you did was just do the program certainty one and you stuck to that one and you asked for a close a minimum of 2 times, then you're gonna get more yeses on that. You will be shocked at how fast people will give you yeses on that. But sometimes they're gonna dig in. And so now it might go from, I need to talk to my spouse, to the now she says the real reason is, you know what, honestly, I think it's just a little expensive. I think it's a little bit too outpriced. I don't think I can pay in full for that. And so now we get into the next objection, which might be closer to the truth, right? Or what you'll notice is they might double down on the spouse, right? And so if they double down on the objection, then you might just start getting a hint of like, oh man, this might actually be the truth. So you might actually really need to talk to her spouse. But we don't give up just yet. Now we move into that second loop, right? And second loop, if you remember, what is that going to be? Second loop is going to be trust. And so now we go on the trust element. Same exact thing, right? We're gonna clarify that next objection she gave, right? In a little bit of a different way, right? You don't wanna say the same thing over and over again. But now she talks about money. She's like, you know, you clarify, awesome. So I'm glad to know that, you know, program makes sense, like we're 100% on that. So it seems like then if you believe that the program works for you, it's really just the financial side. It's like, how do you pay for it? Like, how can you make this work in the budget? Is that correct? Right, so I'm clarifying that objection. And then I move to asking. Now, it's weird if you kind of say, can I ask you a question, you know, 2 times in a row? It's kind of weird, but this is where we can still get permission of like, okay, cool. I mean, I definitely think I can see some things that can help us out with dealing with that, if that's cool if I share it with you. Is that okay? Awesome, perfect. So, before even diving into like the whole financial side of things, I guess the biggest thing I want to know is like, so you believe the program works. Do you believe that like over the last, 30 minutes we spent together, like, do you trust myself? Like, do you trust me to kind of, point you in the right direction with this? Do you trust the company? Do we have that trust here to be able to help you out with your goals? And you're asking straight up about the trust, right? Because you want to attack that head on. It's going to feel a little bit awkward, but getting into that next phase is going to be really key, because what happens here is where it gets special. This is now where they start to buckle down, where they have agreed with the program. They've sold themselves on why it's really important for them, why they see it's working. And now they're going to sell themselves on why they trust you. They're going to answer things like, yeah, absolutely. Like, you've been great. You definitely have asked me questions that no one else has asked. Like, I definitely feel like this is the right place. This is definitely the place that I want to be at. And the reason why we do that is because then now we can go for the close again. So for the third time, we're asking for the close. Perfect. So I'm glad to know like the program makes sense. You trust us. You want to do business with us. Like, I'm so glad, because I feel the same way with you. I know we can help you out. So do you mind if I make a suggestion? Awesome. So why don't we go ahead and do this? Most people don't actually pay in full. So we actually have different payment options, financing options. Let's start there. Let's get you started for a little bit now, right? So that way we can earn that trust, right? So we can get you started here on this program, this package, or we can take out this and drop it down. That will save you money here, but let's make it easier to be able to get you to be able to sign up and make this thing happen, so you don't have to keep putting it off like you've been, right? And so now I can go into that next close after going through the trust loop. So we've had program certainty, we've had trust, and so now we've asked for the close 3 times. And so whatever objection comes next is probably the real objection, right? Now it might be a, hey, I just don't have the budget for this. Or, hey, I really do need to talk to my spouse. Or, hey, I just still want to think about it, right? So you get that objection. Now we would go into what we call action threshold. And that's the one where we're just going to be straight up, right? We can clarify still, but this is the one where we are attacking, right? We're like, hey, Susie, you talked to me, you've been dealing with this for 20 years, you've been trying to lose weight, you just told me that this is the program that can finally get you where you want to go, right? You trust us, you trust me. So like, really, what is it? Like, what is stopping you, Susie, from committing to this today? Why are you putting this off? And then now we can just see where the chip, where the card's flaying, right? Like, what happens? She might come out with the real objection of like, hey, I just truly don't have the money. I'm in debt, I don't have money in my bank account, I can't pay for this. And then you can try and deal with that and figure it out. Or it might truly be a, hey, you know what? Me and my spouse have this hard agreement. We don't make decisions without each other. And then now you can attack the objection and do things like, hey, cool, let's get him on this phone, right? Or hey, let's FaceTime him right now. Or hey, what questions will he ask? Like, let's make sure you're prepared for that, so that if this is something that you really want, then let's do that. And then we can book a call for tomorrow, right? And so now you really can attack the objection. But the cool part about when you're here is that you just spent 3 times asking them in a non-salesy way. You just move them even further along down the process. They trust you. They believe in the program. They've just sold themselves even more on it. And so even if you can't overcome that last objection, then at least you know that if you book a follow-up, they're probably gonna show, right? They're probably gonna actually come back. They're not gonna ghost you, because you got to the truth of the matter. And so this is why looping is so important. I promise you, if you adopt this, if you go back, you watch this over again, you look at the playbook that we have for this, and you practice the looping, and you actually do it, right? And you know you do it because you need to track how many times do you ask for the close. And are you following the loops? Program certainty, trust, action threshold. If you add that into your game, you and your team will close more deals. So stop leaving stuff on the table. Stop letting that 70% walk out the door. Practice looping, adopt it, and make it happen. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and comment below. Let us know, subscribe, and we are excited to see you on the next one.